The court of Emperor Kylus was a place of frost and silence. The great hall stretched endlessly, its marble floors gleaming like ice, its towering pillars carved with the victories of his ancestors. Fire braziers lined the walls, but their heat never reached the throne, where the emperor sat cloaked in black and silver. He was a man carved from granite, his face pale, expressionless, his eyes the color of steel left too long in winter. They called him the Cold Emperor. He had ruled for 6 years, and in that time, his empire had doubled in size. Border kingdoms had bent their knees, armies had shattered, and rivals had vanished into shallow graves. He was admired, feared, and hated in equal measure. But no one loved him. Kylus had no need for love. Love was weakness. Or so he believed. The night she entered his palace, she was no more than a shadow among shadows. Her name was Selene. To the outside world, she was a merchant's daughter, chosen to serve among the emperor's new handmaidens. To those who had trained her, she was something else entirely, a dagger dressed in silk. Her mission was simple: infiltrate, observe, and when the time came, strike. The rebels had sent her across the empire with only one command: end Kylus's reign before it consumed the entire continent. Selene moved through the silent corridors with calculated grace, her eyes downcast, her posture submissive, but her mind sharp as a blade. She studied the guards, the rhythm of their patrols, the subtle glances exchanged between servants. Every detail mattered. Every weakness could be used. When she was finally led into the great hall, the emperor raised his eyes from the parchment in his hand. For the first time, his gaze settled on her. And the world shifted. "Your name?" His voice was low, smooth, yet cold enough to make her bones ache. "Selene, my lord," she murmured, bowing low. His eyes lingered on her longer than custom dictated. Not lecherous, not even curious, merely searching. As though he were measuring the weight of her soul. "Rise," Kylus commanded. She obeyed, her movements flawless. He watched her with the same detachment he gave to maps of battlefields and reports of grain harvests. Yet something in his gaze unsettled her. Spies were trained to remain unseen, to be invisible in plain sight. But under his eyes, she felt utterly exposed. "You will attend to the Empress's chambers," he said at last. Selene's heart skipped a beat. The Empress. But Kylus had no wife. He had never taken one, despite pressure from his council and foreign envoys. The chambers of the Empress had stood empty for years, unused, untouched, a hollow wing of the palace. "My lord," she asked softly, careful to keep the confusion from her tone. "Clean them. Keep them ready." He lowered his gaze back to the parchment, as if dismissing her. Selene curtsied and withdrew. But her thoughts burned. Why would a man who had never sought a wife suddenly wish to prepare those rooms? That night, she lay awake on her pallet in the servants' quarters, staring at the cracked ceiling. She should have been planning routes, memorizing guard schedules, marking the weak points in the palace walls. Instead, her mind returned again and again to the emperor's eyes, grey and cold, yet deeper than she had expected. She told herself it was nothing. Just vigilance. Just the instinct of a spy studying her target. And yet, deep inside, a flicker of something else stirred. The cold emperor had noticed her. And she could not decide if that was fortune or doom. The palace was a place of quiet oppression, a gilded cage wrapped in silence. Servants moved like shadows, their heads bowed, their mouths tight with caution. Soldiers stood at every corner, armor polished, swords gleaming, eyes blank as stone. Selene slipped into their rhythm easily. To anyone watching, she was another servant among dozens, obedient, diligent, invisible. But she was always watching. Each morning, she walked the halls of the unused Empress's wing, her hands busy with dusting, scrubbing, and polishing. Her mind, however, mapped every door, every hidden passage, every window that overlooked the courtyard below. She memorized patrol routes, shifts, and the layout of guards. She marked who lingered near the kitchens, who drank too heavily at night, who slipped into forbidden corridors. Selene learned faster than she had expected. This empire was built on discipline, not trust. And discipline could be broken. The first time she saw Kylus outside the great hall was by accident. She had been carrying linens through a long corridor when he turned the corner, flanked by 2 guards. She froze, lowering her gaze instantly, her arms tightening around the bundle of fabric. He stopped. "Celine," he said, and the sound of her name on his lips sent a chill through her. He had not forgotten. Out of dozens of servants, out of the faceless crowd, he remembered her. "My lord," she murmured, bowing low. His eyes lingered on her, calm, unreadable. "The Empress's chambers. Are they kept well?" "Yes, my lord," she answered smoothly. Something flickered in his gaze then, a shadow of thought, gone as quickly as it appeared. "Good." And without another word, he moved on. Celine remained bowed until his footsteps faded. Only then did she allow herself to breathe again. The other servants began to whisper. The cold emperor never noticed anyone. He gave orders, he received reports, but he was as distant as the marble walls around him. And yet, he had spoken to Celine more than once. Some whispered envy, others suspicion. "You should be careful," one maid whispered as they scrubbed the floors together. "When the emperor looks at someone too long, it means one of 2 things: he wants them close, or he wants them gone." Celine smiled faintly, hiding the tension in her chest. "Perhaps he does not see me at all." But she knew that was a lie. Weeks passed. Kailas did not seek her out, yet she felt his presence always. In the great hall, she would feel his gaze brush over her before moving on. In the corridors, she would sometimes catch sight of him, tall and severe in his black cloak, his guards trailing behind like shadows. He never stopped her again. He never spoke more than a word or 2. And yet, Celine felt as though an invisible thread bound them, tightening with each passing day. It unsettled her. She was a spy, a weapon meant to end his life, not entangle herself in his notice. And yet, against her will, her curiosity grew. Who was this man who had conquered half the world yet sat alone on his throne? Who ordered the Empress's chambers cleaned, though no Empress had ever existed? What secrets lay beneath his marble mask? One evening, as she walked the outer gardens carrying a tray of wine, she found him standing alone by the fountain. No guards. No councilman. Just Kailas, his cloak rippling in the night breeze, his hand resting on the cold stone edge. She froze, unsure if she should turn back. But his voice cut through the night. "Do you know why the roses do not bloom here?" Celine's pulse quickened. He was speaking to her. Slowly, she approached, bowing her head. "No, my lord." "Because this place was not meant for beauty," Kailas said softly, almost to himself. "It was meant for stone, for iron, for victory. Flowers do not survive here." She looked at him then, truly looked. His profile was sharp, chiseled, his expression unreadable. Yet his words carried something she had never heard from him before. Not coldness. Not command. Something else. Loneliness. Celine lowered her eyes again, careful not to reveal the storm within her. "My lord," she whispered, "perhaps flowers only need patience." For the first time, the cold emperor's lips curved, not a smile, not fully, but close. And in that fleeting moment, Celine knew her mission had grown far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Celine returned to her chambers that night with her thoughts in disarray. She sat by the small table, the flickering candle casting shadows across her face, and unrolled a scrap of parchment hidden in the lining of her dress. With a sharpened piece of charcoal, she wrote in the code of her homeland. "The Emperor grows curious. I am closer than expected." She hesitated before adding the next line. "He is not what we believed." Her hand paused, trembling slightly. She nearly struck the words out, but something stopped her. Folding the parchment, she slid it into the false bottom of a wine jug. In a few days, a merchant loyal to her kingdom would collect it. When she blew out the candle, sleep did not come easily. She could still hear Kailas's voice in the gardens. Still see the almost smile that had curved his lips. The next day, her opportunity arrived. Celine had been summoned to assist in the outer library, a sprawling room with towering shelves that smelled of leather and dust. The emperor was there, alone once again, seated at a long oak table with scrolls spread before him. He did not look up when she entered, but his voice carried through the room. "Tell me, Celine, do you read?" She blinked, startled. The question was dangerous. A servant was not expected to read the wrong answer could mark her as suspicious. "I know letters, my lord," she said carefully, lowering her head. "Enough to serve." His eyes lifted, piercing and unrelenting. Enough to serve. But more than most. Her throat tightened. She had misstepped. Kailas leaned back in his chair, studying her. "I have no patience for liars." Celine's hands curled against her skirts, her heart thundering. But she forced calm into her voice. "Then I will not lie, my lord. I learned letters as a child. My mother believed it would give me worth." Something flickered in his gaze again. A pause. Then he nodded once. "Sit." She froze. "My lord." "I said sit." The command left no room for refusal. Slowly, she lowered herself across the table from him. The parchment before him bore maps of distant provinces, supply routes, battle formations. Her blood chilled. If she memorized even a fraction of what she saw, her mission could be complete. But Kailas's next words threw her off balance. "Read this." He slid a different scroll toward her. Her eyes moved across the faded ink. It was not military. It was poetry. Old, lyrical, a hymn to stars that no longer shone above their skies. Her lips moved silently, forming the words. "Out loud," he said. Her voice, soft at first, filled the library. The verses spoke of yearning, of distant light, of something eternal beyond reach. And as she read, she felt his gaze upon her, not cold, not calculating, but intent. Listening. When she finished, silence stretched between them. "Your mother was wise," Kailas murmured at last. "Words are sharper than blades. Few understand this." Celine lowered her eyes. "My lord honors me with his trust." "I honor no one," he said sharply, but there was no conviction in it. His hand, resting on the table, curled slowly into a fist. That night, Celine sat alone again, her mind a storm. He was not supposed to show her this part of himself. He was not supposed to make her forget, even for a moment, why she was here. Yet the sound of his voice lingered. The way his eyes had softened when she read, the way he listened, as though her voice carried something he had lost long ago. She clenched her fists. "Fool. You cannot let him draw you in." But deep down, she already knew the truth. The cold emperor was no longer just her target. And she feared, with every passing day, that she was no longer just his servant. One evening soon after, her fear sharpened into reality. Celine had just left the kitchens when a rough hand seized her arm and dragged her into a shadowed alcove. She gasped, but the soldier's grip tightened, his breath sour against her ear. "You think no one sees, little dove," he hissed. "The emperor's eyes linger on you, but mine linger longer. Tell me, what makes you so special?" Celine's pulse spiked. Her hand slipped to the small blade she always kept hidden in her sleeve. "Release me." The soldier laughed, low and dangerous. "Or what? You'll scream? No one will help you. Not here." Before Celine could strike, a voice like ice shattered the air. "Unhand her." The soldier froze. Kailas stood at the end of the corridor, shadows clinging to him like a second cloak, his gaze colder than Celine had ever seen. The soldier stammered, releasing her at once. "My lord, I meant no harm." Kailas did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Report to the dungeons. Tell them the emperor has given his judgment." The man paled, falling to his knees. "Please, my lord, mercy." "Now," Kailas said. The soldier scrambled away, his footsteps fading into silence. Celine's breath shook in her chest. Kailas stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. For the first time, the mask cracked, not into kindness, but into something sharper. Possessive. Protective. "From this day," he said softly, "no one touches you. Do you understand?" Celine swallowed hard, her blade still hidden in her sleeve, her heart burning with a confusion she could no longer deny. "Yes, my lord," she whispered. But inside, she wondered who was truly in danger, her, or him. The palace grew quieter as autumn settled over the empire. The days shortened, the nights lengthened, and whispers of unrest drifted through the marble halls. Provinces far to the east had begun to resist taxation. Merchants spoke of raiders along the coast. It was the kind of instability that spies thrived upon, yet Selene found her thoughts consumed less by duty and more by the Emperor's watchful eyes. Every day, she felt his presence more keenly. Kylus never touched her, never overstepped the rigid lines of propriety, yet he made her world smaller, closer. His gaze followed her at feasts, at court gatherings, even during the quiet hours in the library. It was as if he could sense her intentions, weighing her secrets without knowing them. But Selene's masters did not allow hesitation. That week, a letter arrived, slipped beneath her chamber door by a merchant's hand. She unfolded it under moonlight, her pulse steadying as she read. The Emperor grows vulnerable. Secure the maps of his winter campaign. Deliver them within 7 days. Fail, and you will be replaced. The words cut sharper than steel. There was no mercy in her homeland's commands. She had one chance. Selene stared at the flame of her candle, the shadows dancing along the stone walls. She could steal the maps easily enough. Kylus had shown her the layouts in the library, had even spoken to her of supply lines as though testing her wit. He had given her access no servant should possess. All she had to do was betray him. But when she pictured his face, the rare softness, the unguarded weight behind his silences, her chest tightened. "What are you doing, Selene?" she thought. "He is your enemy. Nothing more." And yet, her chance came 2 nights later. The Emperor's war council had ended late, the chamber still strewn with scrolls, wax seals, and scattered goblets of wine. Selene slipped in under the pretense of tidying. The guards at the door barely looked at her, they had seen her there often enough. Her eyes locked onto the maps. The parchment glistened faintly in the torchlight, detailed with rivers, supply routes, and the positions of armies. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. She could roll the scroll, conceal it in her sleeve, and walk out unnoticed. One motion, and her mission would be complete. But before her fingers touched the parchment, a voice spoke from the shadows. "You hesitate." Selene's breath caught. She turned. Kylus was seated in the corner, half shrouded by the dim firelight. He had been there the entire time, silent, watching. "My lord," she stammered, lowering her head to hide the panic in her eyes. He did not move. "Why do you linger here at night, when the council has adjourned?" Selene's mind raced. "I sought only to clear the chamber, my lord." "Clear it," he repeated softly, his tone unreadable. Then he rose, crossing the room until he stood only a breath away. His height, his bearing, his aura of restrained danger made the air feel heavier. His gaze fell to the scroll her hand hovered near. "Of all things, you choose to tidy this." His words were quiet, but laced with suspicion. Selene forced her hand away, clasping it behind her back. "Forgive me, my lord. I meant no offense." For a long moment, Kylus studied her, as if weighing her soul. Then, to her surprise, he reached for the parchment himself. He rolled it with deliberate slowness, tied it with a strip of leather, and placed it directly in her hands. "Take it," he said. Her heart stopped. "My lord, you wish to tidy? Then keep it safe until morning. Return it to me in the library." Her breath faltered. He was testing her. He had to be. No emperor would entrust battle plans to a mere servant. Unless he wanted to see what she would do. Selene bowed, clutching the scroll. "As you command." Kylus's eyes narrowed slightly, as if he could hear the war raging in her chest. "Do not disappoint me." Then he was gone, leaving her with the weight of her decision burning in her arms. That night, Selene stared at the scroll on her table, the ink shimmering faintly in the candlelight. Her orders demanded she smuggle it out. Her heart demanded she return it. And in the silence of her chamber, she whispered to herself, "You will destroy me, Kylus." The next morning, she entered the library. Kylus was waiting, as though he had known the very hour she would come. His gaze flicked to the scroll in her hands. "You kept it safe?" he asked. "Yes, my lord." "Not a mark upon it?" She swallowed. "Not a mark." He took it from her, their fingers brushing. The touch burned her skin like fire. Kylus's eyes held hers for a long, terrible moment. Then, at last, he nodded. "You are loyal." I find that rare. Celine bowed, hiding the guilt clawing at her throat. She had chosen him. For now. But her homeland would not forgive her hesitation. And Kylus, she suspected, already knew. The storm broke 3 days later. Celine awoke to the sound of shouting in the halls, the clash of boots on marble. She slipped from her bed, pulling her cloak around her shoulders, and cracked open her chamber door. Guards rushed past with drawn swords, their armor clattering in the dim torchlight. "What's happening?" she whispered to a servant hurrying by. The woman's face was pale. "A spy, they say. A traitor within the palace. The emperor hunts for them even now." Celine's blood froze. Her masters had moved faster than she feared. If Kylus's suspicion had not yet unmasked her, their pressure soon would. They would not wait forever for results. She closed the door, pressing her back against the wood. Her pulse pounded in her ears. If they discovered her letters, her hiding places, it would all be over. And yet, the greater terror was not death. It was the thought of Kylus's eyes when he realized who she truly was. Later that morning, the emperor summoned her. The throne room was hushed, the great braziers casting long shadows. Kylus sat upon the dais, his expression carved from marble. Beside him, captains and advisors stood in tense silence. At the center of the hall knelt a man, blooded, beaten, his hands bound. Celine recognized him instantly. The merchant. The one who had ferried her letters. Her stomach dropped. Kylus's voice cut through the air, low and sharp. This man was caught with coded messages. He claims to have allies within these walls. The merchant's swollen lips barely moved. "Mercy, my lord." Kylus's gaze was colder than winter. "I do not grant mercy to those who conspire against me." He raised his hand. A guard's sword flashed. The body slumped to the floor. Celine flinched, her breath catching. She kept her face still, her body rigid, but inside her world tilted violently. Kylus's eyes swept the hall, pausing on her only for an instant. Traitors believe they can slither in shadows. But the empire does not suffer snakes. The hall echoed with silence. Then, with a curt gesture, he dismissed them all. When Celine turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Not you." Her heart leapt painfully. Slowly, she turned back. The guards filed out, leaving her alone with the emperor. He descended the dais, his cloak trailing like storm clouds, and stopped before her. His eyes were unreadable, his voice low. "You look pale." Celine's mouth was dry. "The sight of blood unsettles me, my lord." He studied her, too closely, too intently. "Strange. You do not strike me as a woman who fears blood." Her throat tightened. "I am only a servant." "Are you?" The words were almost a whisper. For a heartbeat, she thought he knew. Truly knew. But instead of accusation, his gaze softened, a fleeting crack in the armor. "Do not linger with fear, Celine. Fear is a leash, and you are not meant for leashes." Her breath caught. She had no words. Kylus turned away, his voice returning to steel. "Go. Rest." She bowed, every muscle taut, and left the throne room on unsteady legs. That night, she wrote no letter. She could not. Her hiding places were compromised, her merchant dead, her path cut off. And still, the emperor's words echoed in her skull. "You are not meant for leashes." It was as though he saw her more clearly than anyone ever had. And that terrified her more than discovery. The following days blurred. Kylus did not summon her to council, nor to the library, nor to the gardens. He kept his distance, as if measuring the space between them. Yet whenever they passed in the halls, his gaze lingered cold, assessing, but never indifferent. Celine felt the distance like a wound. The man she had set out to betray had become the only one she could not bear to lose. But the gods, it seemed, were not finished testing them. On the 5th night, she woke to the scrape of steel against her window. Shadows shifted in the moonlight. A blade glinted. Assassins. Her homeland had sent them not to help her, but to finish what she had failed to do. Celine's body moved before thought. She snatched the dagger hidden beneath her pillow, parrying the first strike, kicking the attacker back through the window frame. Another figure lunged, steel flashing toward her throat. The chamber door slammed open. Kailas stood there, cloak thrown over bare shoulders, sword already drawn. His blade found the assassin's heart before Selene could even cry out. The last intruder fled into the night, but Kailas did not pursue. He turned instead to Selene, his chest heaving, his eyes dark with something more dangerous than rage. "Why," he whispered, "do they come for you?" Selene's dagger slipped from her hand. Her secret hung between them like a blade, ready to fall. She had no answer left. The silence between them was deafening. Moonlight streamed across the chamber, catching the sheen of blood on Kailas's sword. Selene's chest rose and fell in shallow, trembling breaths. She could still feel the brush of steel against her skin, the sting of her near death, but none of it compared to the weight of the Emperor's gaze. "Why do they come for you?" he asked again, his voice sharp but trembling beneath. Selene opened her mouth, but no lie came. The mask she had worn for months was shattering piece by piece. She lowered her eyes, shame flooding her veins. "Because I am not who you think I am." The words seemed to still the air itself. Kailas's hand clenched around his sword hilt. His tone, when it came, was deadly soft. "Speak." Selene forced herself to meet his eyes, though fear seared her throat. "I was sent here by those who wish your empire broken. I am their knife in the dark, their eyes within your walls. I was sent to steal your maps, your plans, and deliver them to your enemies." The words fell like stones. Kailas's expression did not shift, but his silence was worse than rage. He stepped closer, until the blade of his sword rested beneath her chin. The cold steel kissed her skin, lifting her face toward his. "You confess this to me," he said, each word deliberate, knowing it is death. "Yes," Selene whispered, her voice breaking. "Because I could not do it. I could not betray you." Not after, her throat closed, but she forced the truth out. "Not after you." Something flickered in Kailas's eyes. He searched her face as if to find the lie. But there was none. At last, with a growl deep in his chest, he cast his sword aside. The steel clattered to the floor, echoing against the stone. His hands, cold, steady, gripped her shoulders instead. "Foolish woman," he muttered. "Do you not know what you've done? You have put my empire, my throne, my life, in jeopardy." Tears stung Selene's eyes, but she did not flinch. "Then kill me, and protect your empire. I am ready." Kailas's jaw tightened. His breath trembled as he leaned closer, his voice ragged with something she had never heard before. "I should kill you." Selene's eyes closed, waiting for the final strike. But instead of death, warmth touched her lips. It was not gentle. It was not tender. It was fierce, claiming, desperate, the kiss of a man who had buried every feeling in ice and found it breaking, cracking, shattering against his will. Selene's heart surged. She kissed him back, tears slipping free, her hands tangling in his cloak as though she could hold him against the world itself. When he pulled away, his forehead rested against hers. His voice was hoarse, broken. "I cannot let you go. Even if it destroys me." Selene choked on a sob. "Then let us be destroyed together." The days that followed were chaos. Assassins had failed, but rumors spread like wildfire. Whispers of betrayal in the palace, whispers of a servant too close to the emperor. Kailas crushed dissent with ruthless precision, silencing his enemies, but he could not silence the storm building beyond his borders. And Selene, she could not run. She stayed by his side, though each day she knew her past drew closer. One night, as the fires of rebellion lit the horizon, Kailas stood at the palace balcony, the weight of empire heavy upon his shoulders. Selene came to him, her cloak drawn against the chill. "They will not stop," she said quietly. "Not until they have you." Kailas's eyes burned as he looked out into the dark. "Let them come." He turned to her, his hand finding hers with unshakable resolve. "I have faced gods and armies. What is one more curse, if you are beside me?" Selene's chest ached. She knew their story could only end in fire and blood. Yet in that moment, as the Emperor's fingers tightened around hers, she believed that love could defy even the coldest fate. For the cold Emperor had fallen, and with him, the spy who came to destroy him. Winter came early that year. Snow fell heavy over the empire, cloaking its cities, its fields, even the blood that stained its borders. The fires of rebellion did not die, but smoldered like embers, waiting for breath to flare again. In the palace, the whispers never ceased. Servants muttered behind their hands, courtiers watched with sharpened eyes. They all saw the change in their emperor, how the cold one, the man of iron and silence, now carried warmth in his gaze when a certain woman walked at his side. Selene bore the weight of their stares, but she did not falter. She had lived as a shadow for too long. Now, even if the sun burned her to ash, she would walk in its light. One evening, Kailas summoned her to the private garden. Snow dusted the evergreen branches, the fountain frozen in stillness. He stood beneath the pale moon, his cloak lined with fur, his crown set aside. When she approached, he held no scrolls, no sword. Only a single dagger, plain and sharp, gleaming in his hand. Her breath caught. "My lord." Kailas's voice was low. "This blade is the Empire's test. My captains believe you must be purged, that a spy cannot be tamed, only bled. They demand I prove my loyalty to them, by spilling yours." Selene's heart clenched. She had expected it, in some dark corner of her soul. Still, the words pierced like arrows. Slowly, she stepped closer, her voice steady though her hands trembled. "Then do it. End me now, before all of them. Better to die in your hands than theirs." Kailas's jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened on the hilt. For a moment, his eyes were the same as they had been when she first saw him, cold, merciless, endless winter. And then he dropped the dagger. It fell into the snow with a dull thud. "No," he said, his voice breaking through the silence like thunder. "I will not be their puppet. Let them brand me traitor, let them call me weak. I will carve a new empire with blood and steel, if I must, but you will not die by my hand." Selene's eyes burned with tears. She reached for him, her fingers brushing his cheek, the warmth of him startling even in the frozen air. "Kailas." His hand covered hers, fierce and unyielding. "From this night, you are no longer a shadow. You are mine. Not my spy. Not my servant. Mine." And for the first time, the cold emperor's voice carried not command, but vow. But empires are not ruled by love alone. Weeks later, war drums thundered across the borders. Armies gathered, led by kings who once called Selene their dagger. They marched not only to conquer, but to reclaim the spy who had betrayed them. Selene stood beside Kailas on the battlements as the horizon burned red with torches. Fear gnawed at her heart, but she stood tall. "If they come for me," she whispered, "promise me you will not falter." Kailas's eyes burned with fire. "If they come for you, Selene, they will find only death." And as the first horns of war split the night, the emperor who had once been cold raised his banner high, standing not for empire alone, but for the woman who had stolen his frozen heart. Their story was not one of peace, nor of simple endings. It was a story of fire in the snow, of love entwined with ruin. And though the world would one day call it a tragedy, in that moment, to Kailas and Selene, it was enough.